Hello, happy holidays. Welcome back to the Tetracast. We are in episode 326, recorded on November 25th, 2023, the day after Black Friday. And normally, normal people don't podcast on the weekend after Thanksgiving, but we're not normal. We're here, we're back again to talk about video games, except nothing really came out this week. But we did have, some new news, which is surprising. And we're, working through some backlogs for in preparation for end of the year stuff. And, I hear that Valve released a new hardware device just recently as well. We'll have new details on that because one of us got our hands on it. I have with me Adam Vitale.
Hello.
I have James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
And I have Chao Minwoo.
How's it going?
All right, happy holidays, folks. People in the United States celebrated our Thanksgiving and other, associated holidays. With that, I know Chao, you're in Canada. Thanksgiving is old news to you.
We're just ahead of the curve, okay?
If you say so, you forgot your Thanksgiving, unlike us.
You did.
They're never gonna let that down.
I had a lovely Thanksgiving. I posted my meal. Had some turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing. Made some interesting desserts with some homemade triple fudge shake with vanilla ice cream on top.
Sounds good.
And we also had fruit salad. We had Filipino fruit salad where we have a bunch of fruits and then we put condensed milk on top of it. That's our fruit salad in the Philippines as a dessert. And that was delicious. Anything to share on your guys' Thanksgivings? Any good food, good company, anything cool?
So I live alone.
Go, Adam.
I live alone. So Thanksgiving weekend is just a long weekend for me.
Mhm.
I just bought a caramel apple pie from the grocery store and ate it.
All right.
That's my Thanksgiving.
That's it. Hey, caramel apple pie is delicious.
I had a nice Thanksgiving with my parents, and actually going to a friendsgiving party after this podcast.
Nice.
So that'll be nice.
Oh man, yeah, the double Thanksgiving specials are always fun when you're hopping around either different families, or to like you said, a friendsgiving when they're celebrating a little bit late for the weekend, but you get more new food to try out. So if there's anything cool there, let us know. We're always down for food pictures in the staff chat. So as you can tell, once again, I'm the host. My name's Josh Torres. Brian Vitale is still out this time for a holiday. Obviously out of town, and that's all good. You should be joining us. Maybe next week. We'll see. Until then, I'll be your host. Let's kick things off with a video game. Adam, you've been working on a little game called Lies of P, and we briefly mentioned it here and there, but we haven't had anyone play through it thoroughly on the podcast yet to really talk about the nitty gritty. This was the Souls-like dark fantasy game from NeoWiz that was very slightly Pinocchio themed, and I know you've been playing a lot of it over the past few days. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so this time of year, now that all the major releases of the year, RPG releases are out, we're starting to think about end of the year awards. We have our end of the year podcast coming up. We're thinking it's going to be on the weekend of December 9th and 10th, but that's not set in stone yet. It seems likely, but not guaranteed. And, this is the sort of time of year where it's like, okay, what have I missed this year that I kind of want to experience before we get to that point? Now, first of all, I'll mention that, yes, I know Dragon Quest Monsters comes out next week, but the way that RPG sites kind of years work is we go from December through December. So basically anything that releases this December is valid in next year's awards, and thus anything from last December is valid in this year's awards. And we do that just because we have to set aside a month for polling for our reader poll and for our podcasting and everything anyway. December makes the most sense for that because it's usually a release light month. But that just sort of means that everything that's in December, we have to kind of pushed back to the next year. And also, it's not really fair for a game to come out and be so close to the awards. So Dragon Quest Monsters 3 next year's awards.
You can thank for Saga Scarlet Grace from back then for establishing this policy, because that's the whole reason we
that game was
establishing
excellent.
that policy. It was great. I love it, but that's the reason why we started this December thing.
Yeah. So, but that means that for this year's awards, that means we will have to consider things like Marvel's Midnight Suns. You were pretty fond of that. Is that a top 10 game? It's hard to say. This year since then has had a ton of great games. So we'll see. But anyways, yeah. So Lies of P was a game that I decided to go back to, but I'm not allowed to have an opinion on it.
Why?
Because I've never played a Dark Souls. So that's sort of like trying to measure water level without knowing what your sea level is.
This is like your ongoing identity and gimmick. Adam here has played fucking every Souls-like, but not the proper Souls series itself at all.
So it's like trying to determine a voltage delta without a reference electrode. You can't do it.
Yes.
Of course. But anyways, that was a joke. So Lies of P, I was always interested in it, but September was kind of crazy full, and I was reviewing Nayuta at the time. There was everyone's favorite game, The Adventures of Dai came out.
Yes.
Fate Samurai Remnant. Anyways, all in September. But this game, the other Josh, who we affectionately refer to as Josh 2, reviewed it for our site, and he was pretty happy with it, pretty fond of it. He gave it an 8 out of 10. He would like to say that he beat the game before they nerfed it. They nerfed a couple of the bosses, made them easier. I remember him when he was reviewing it, struggling with these bosses. Specifically, the King of Puppets was a difficult boss at launch. But anyways, this game has reviewed well. Seems like people are pretty fond of it overall. You know, it seems to have gotten pretty good reception. It was even nominated for the Game Awards. The most important ones, the Keeleys. As for best RPG, and also I think best art. So, you know, just broadly a game that seems to have been well received. Not saying it's flawless, but, you know, pretty good. I'm like, you know what? None of us on the podcast have really played this game. Josh 2 did, but he never really was able to come on and talk about it. So I figured, hey, I'll just give it a shot and play it. And I have beaten it. And where do I start? So the Pinocchio theming, it's there, but it is more just like addressing to things. I wouldn't say it's like non-existent. It is there, but it's not like the Disney Pinocchio or anything like that. Not even close. It's just a very loose theming to it. It's a Souls-like game. I don't know what that means, 'cause I've never played a Souls. I'll stop joking. But anyways, so this game, I actually played a game last year that was very similar to this. It's another off-brand Souls-like called Steel Rising. And the reason why I say these games are similar are, you know, they're both developed by, you know, non-Japanese studios. One's Korean, in Lies of P's case. One's French, in Steel Rising's case. Both are set in like the 18th, 19th century era, Europe. And both have like a puppet automaton like theme to it. Only Lies of P, well, let me put it this way. Steel Rising I thought was just okay. It was fine. It was not great, but it wasn't terrible. It was just fine. But I do think Lies of P is much more polished, and most importantly, in this specific comparison, has much better level design than Steel Rising. So you play as Pinocchio, only he's never actually called Pinocchio. He's just called P, very lightly. And he's a puppet who wakes up for mysterious reasons, and he hears a voice in his head from Sophia, who is basically this game's version of the Blue Fairy, basically saying, you know, puppets have taken over this city of Krat, and you need to find me and anyone else who's still, you know, alive after this puppet frenzy, they call it. And then, kind of like other games of this genre, you kind of just pick up a sword. There's a couple different swords you can pick up at the beginning. Pretty much what you'd expect, like the big broadsword for a slower build, lighter, faster sword, and then something in the middle. And then you're off. You basically just explore zones. All the usual Souls-like systems apply here. You find stargazers, which are basically bonfires, I am told, to level up your character based on the ergo, or the souls, you collect, and you can power up your character. You can use this to buy items, consumables, sometimes different weapons, sometimes collectibles and things like that. There's a stamina meter that judges how many attacks you can get in. This should all sound really familiar. But overall, I just think this game is really well polished, really well done. And it's some of the story-ish stuff doesn't all fall into place. I know that's not really the focus in these games anyways. But overall, I think it's pretty solid. I like the combat. There's a lot of different ways you can power up your character. There's a very amusingly titled P organ system. You want to guess what that is?
You swap out the different parts in your body for upgrades?
Yeah, pretty much. So
Okay.
So how does the progression work in this game? So you have your normal 6 stats that you can level up, and it's like your HP, your stamina, your defense, your kind of carrying capacity, as well as a couple of stats that basically scale with your weapon. Like there's a couple different weapons that scale on different stats. This is also very Souls-like. But then, in addition to that, you can equip amulets that have different effects and things like that. But the kind of the unique part of Lies of P is the P organ system. And basically, you find these quartz in the game. And a quartz basically unlocks a new node on your skill tree. And I won't get into all the details because it gets a little bit tricky to just state out in sentence here. But you basically use these quartz to unlock various passive buffs in the game. These can be things like you do more damage with your fatal attacks, which is a certain type of attack you do, or your charge attacks take less stamina, or even some of these buffs you can get are just enemies drop more ergo, or shop prices are lowered. I don't know why you upgrading your body can lower shop prices, but it can. And then there's all these different upgrades you can do, and there's not enough quartz to go around to get all of them. So this isn't just a skill tree that you're just going to fill out the whole thing by the end of the game. Definitely not. You need to pick and choose which ones kind of suit your build and your style, and it's pretty cool. And yes, you can respec it if you determine partway through the game, like, man, I was stupid in how I was building my character. You can. There's a system for that. It costs a little bit of money and consumables to do it, but you can. But overall, it's a interesting game. I think it's got some interesting story stuff, interesting characters. It does have a really good art style. It's kind of that 18th century, I guess 19th century European Gothic,
almost Victorian area.
Yeah, Victorian, I guess is a better description of it. It's set in the city of Krat, which I don't know where that's supposed to be. If that's supposed to be fictional London or whatnot, I'm not sure.
I think the cool thing I saw about this game is there's some sort of system the way you manipulate weapons where you can swap different handles with different weapon heads, so you can have a really damaging weapon, but you can swing it fast depending on the handle.
Yeah, actually, I'm kind of embarrassed that I forgot to mention that. So it's probably because I picked one. It's probably because I picked kind of a weapon and I kind of stuck with it. Although I am experimenting with it a little bit more on my New Game Plus run. But yeah, so every weapon in the game that you find, you can split it apart into blade and handle. And basically, the blade determines its damage properties. You'll find some blades that are lighter but do less damage, but you can attack with them faster. Or there's some blades that have inherent fire property or inherent acid property or electric property, or various elements. And then your handle actually determines your attack animation, which is actually kind of cool. So one of the first swords you get is not a rapier, but it's almost like a shamshir, a long sword, kind of slightly curved sword.
Okay.
But actually, it's sort of annoying to use in terms of its actual animation, because your character would sort of do these wide arcing horizontal swings. And actually, what I found is doing these swings, I would oftentimes hit an obstacle in the way. If you're fighting an enemy in a corridor around a wall, you would hit the wall and you would bounce off of it, and the enemy is you can't hit me because the wall's in the way. And it was kind of annoying. So I actually took that blade off of the original handle and I put it on a police baton handle. And that changes your animation so that you're kind of doing a more vertical up and down swing. And I actually kind of like that because yes, much less likely to hit a wall now. And doing these up and down swings. And then you can even put these blades on a pole arm, almost like a pole arm handle, and do more of these thrusting attacks. So you can have like the same weapon with the same damage, but on like different handles will actually change your animation, which if you play any game like this, animations are pretty darn important in terms of trying to time attacks and blocks and everything. And so I haven't actually experimented with this all too much. I kind of just found one that I liked after a little bit of experimenting and stuck with it. But there's a lot of different, there's, I don't know, 25 different weapons in the game. So that's a lot of different combinations of handle and blade. And then you can
that's
also
a pretty interesting like gimmick that like whoever like came up with that idea is kind of like brilliant for that,
Yeah.
because that's something that like you don't really think about when kind of designing these sorts of games.
So I'm actually on my New Game Plus run right now. I'm doing some achievement wrap up, and there's a couple of new things in New Game Plus, but I ran into a boss that was giving me trouble this time, and I realized that they're weak to acid damage. So I'm like, okay, let me mess with a different blade head with like an acid component, and you need to like, there's crafting components and things like that to like power up your blades. That's all pretty simple. So when I know if you cringe when I say crafting, don't. That system, you just kind of find consumables and you just basically spend them to upgrade a sword. But yeah, that system in place is pretty cool. So that blade system and the P organ system are kind of the unique components to this game.
Mhm.
But maybe more broadly here, and I hope this comes across correctly, this is actually a really cool project made by a Korean developer for like an RPG console, a console RPG. I just think that's
Yeah.
cool because when you think of like Korean games, you usually think like mobile games, PC games, MMOs. Not a whole lot. I mean, you got like Magna Carta several years ago, many years
Oh
ago.
yeah,
That's ancient now.
Well, Magna Carta 2 is still ancient, but not as ancient. But like I'm trying to think like console Korean games. Yeah, that we can play in English. 'Cause I'm sure there might be some in other languages, but like Korean developed games, there's not a ton. Like China has
There's
been. Go ahead.
There's a lot of rhythm games. Like I know DJ
Yeah.
Max is a big
Mhm.
one.
Yeah. But
I know
there's
like
but there's
the
other-
Chinese game development industry has exploded in the last, let's just say 10 years. Obviously Genshin is like, and Hoyoverse is a huge one. And that's sort of like console mobile kind of combined. But there's plenty of other games as well. I just think that this is like a kind of a big budget, kind of high profile Korean RPG, console RPG. I just think that's kind of cool. And he even said, the director, Choi somebody, I don't have his name in front of me. Like he even said when he had a little director's letter a couple weeks ago, like this is almost just like almost, how do I put this? I should look this up when I have a second, but kind of just saying like this is a landmark release for a Korean studio. And I
I'm
kind of
sure
agree with him.
definitely.
So,
Yeah, it's definitely like an important milestone, definitely from their perspective, and I agree with that because, like you said, like when it comes to like single player experiences, especially like big budget not AAA but borderline AAA
yeah.
console projects like this, like you don't really see much of that coming from Korea because when like you said, you think of Korea, like when I think of like Korean MMOs, they really specialize in that. There's a lot of like Korean MMOs. When I think of like the G Star Summit, um, event, you see a lot of mobile games and MMOs coming out of that, but nothing really quite on like the scale and space that Lies of P occupies. So it's a pretty like cool project that I'm glad to see like succeeded. Because like up like leading up to release, there was a lot of interest in, but it's like was one of those probably like will it live up to like the excitement and fervor for it? And I think it largely has. Like I think the only like complaints here and there from it from lots that I don't know if they rectified or not, and I know they're doing more ongoing development for it is like when it comes to like boss designs and like kind of like the difficulty of them and how like they kind of have certain movement and patterns and behaviors that don't really account for like what mobility options you have at that time, because I know there are like some key like P organ upgrades that really make those fights smoother. And I know I don't know if they rectified this from launch, but I know some people wish that like some of those P organ upgrades were just like inherent to the character from the get go. Like say like a double dash, for example, um, which I believe is like a P-organ upgrade that you can do. Because
Just like the double dodge roll.
yeah, double dodge roll, and because when you compare it to like similar games like Bloodborne, for example, like that double dodge roll is incorporated inherently to the game. It's something you have at the start of the game. So boss battles in Bloodborne feel like they flow better in comparison because uh, boss behaviors and design and movement patterns of those bosses already incorporate you having that skill because it's inherent in Bloodborne. While like saying something like Lies of P, where a boss might be aggressive, it's hard for you to maneuver around that because you might not have that option available.
I never
to you.
got it, the double dodge,
Mhm.
until way
Okay.
late.
Yeah.
I never used it.
So,
But yeah,
and,
that's
just
actually a
like
very
small things
good
like that.
point that they actually did update this a little bit. I guess in the original version of the game, you had 2 less quartz to deal with at the very beginning of the game, and you kind of feel like some RPGs kind of run into this. I don't know if I want to call it a problem, but like at the beginning of the game, you kind of feel like you suck.
Mhm.
Because you don't have any stats in anything yet and you
Yeah.
haven't unlocked a lot of skills. And they actually, in a recent update, basically kind of gave 2 quartz to you for free at the beginning. Like, all right, here's 2 quartz. You can get 2 skills basically on us to start the game. And I think he even said in the patch notes to maybe make the early parts of the game just a little bit lighter because
Okay.
to kind of give you some, okay, you can unlock a few skills, including maybe the double dodge roll early on. But yeah, in terms of like the combat design, now I've never played Bloodborne, so I can't speak to it, or Sekiro. There's a big emphasis on parrying, and so I think the game is pretty smart about this. Like the first enemies that you're supposed to parry against have really like overly choreographed animation where it's like, I'm going to swing now, you better parry now, and it's pretty easy to time them. So it's kind of a good like warm up. Like, okay, I see how the parrying system works, because when you do a parry or a full block, I forget what they call it in the game. I think it's just called a full guard or a perfect guard. Perfect guard. But I'm gonna call it a parry. You don't take any damage, and the enemy loses a bit of stagger, like a bit of stamina, and they may stun a bit. So there's a very large incentive to block properly. And I know some people hate that. They hate the timing or whatnot.
Yeah, I wasn't really used to it when I was playing it because coming from Bloodborne, when you guard, you take like nearly no damage in the in the Souls games compared to here. I mean, I think you lose a lot of stamina for guarding though. But
Yeah,
here it's like if you don't
there's
perfect
P-organ
parry,
upgrades to improve that. But yeah, like some of the earlier bosses, like for example, there's one that's called, I don't remember the boss's name. Okay, I'll just describe him. There's like this electrified tin robot dude that kind of crawls around on 4s, and he's like I think the 3rd boss in the game, and he has some pretty well like choreographed animated attacks that are pretty easy to block, and they're pretty slow. So it's in that boss, it's like, okay, you better learn how to block on this boss. It's not that hard to get these blocks in, and you're going to do way better if you can figure it out. But then some of the later bosses in the game are just kind of nuts with all their different attacks and whatnot, where that blocking becomes a much more tricky proposition, or it's almost better just kind of like avoid them and attack, like do a dodge and kite and attack during an opening rather than trying to block, because if you don't block, then you're just going to get mauled. So there is a little bit of trickiness there where it's like some bosses work really well with the parrying system, and some bosses are just like, if you could block this 8-hit combo from this boss, you would look really cool doing it, but it's also very hard. So it's, and maybe those bosses, they're not designed, you're not really supposed to block them. But,
Right.
I think there are some bosses that are better than others that kind of suit this blocking, perfect guarding system that's in place. But then, yeah, some of the later bosses just kind of get a little bit nuts, which I guess is sort of expected, where it becomes maybe less like a well choreographed dance and more just, a messy battle of, can you get enough hits in before they get too many hits on you. So yeah, I think the boss design it's here and there. It's hit and miss. Some of them are good. Some of them are a little bit more frustrating.
But the overall package,
Yeah, I would say that
excellent.
8 out of 10 that Josh 2 gave, the other Josh, is pretty good. Or is that's I'm in general agreement with it. I don't think it's like I don't think this game is like super top notch, but I think it's pretty darn good. So in terms of the reason I played it, which was for end of the year consideration, will it make the top 10? Yeah, it might make my top 10. But there's just
I'd say for a more important list, does it make your top 10?
Yeah, there's
No,
so many games that came out this year, but I think it's a good one.
The better question is it better than Lords of the Fallen, or do you prefer Lords of the Fallen?
I haven't played the new Lords of the Fallen. I might play that. Actually, one reason why I played this game first is it sort of felt like this game had... I think both games had kind of like positive reception with some criticism, which is good. But I felt like Lies of P was a little bit more leaning positive, so I kind of went that way first. But I might play Lords of the Fallen too to try it out. It seems like kind of similarly. I know Lords of the Fallen was criticized for like enemy placement and things like that. And they actually have said, and I think they've addressed it somewhat, and they've said they're going to address it in their roadmaps that they've done. So kind of similarly, they're kind of taking feedback and going to try to make some tweaks here and there, hopefully to not like change the flavor of the game, but make it better where they can. So I might try it out.
And apparently this won't be the last time you see the Lies of Verse.
Oh yeah, we talked on a previous podcast about there is a tease at the end of this game for a different kind of a continuation. Now, I was wondering if this tease was like really subtle, but no, it's actually pretty damn explicit. Like, oh, okay, this is where they're going next. Now, I don't know if this is like a sequel or DLC. One thing that's kind of interesting. Well, first of all, they've said there is going to be DLC. So like, it's coming. I don't know when. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting, and I think maybe Souls games are like this, let me know. There's actually, so the stargazers are the bonfires. They're just the devices that you basically can use to warp around the world and do all your level ups and whatnot. But there's one stargazer in a random spot that you can run into that is golden, and you can't do anything with it, and no one knows what you do with it. No one knows. I looked it up. I googled it. I'm like, what is this? What's the point of this?
Yeah. Okay. So no one knows even yet. Okay.
Yeah. So some people are assuming, oh, this is DLC. Like when they add DLC, this is where you access it. That's what people are guessing. I haven't looked too deeply, but I googled it, Golden Stargazer, and people are like, what do you do with this? And people are guessing DLC or something or an update or whatever. But isn't that really a thing? Isn't that a thing with these Souls games where people don't know how to access DLC?
Not. I mean, some Souls games like Bloodborne and like Dark Souls 2, I think, or was it Dark Souls 1, have like really obtuse ways to access their DLCs because it has to be like done like it's a very specific trigger to open the path to them. But there's nothing really in the base games when they release that like kind of like tease what the DLC is gonna be. There's not usually a thing in the game that's like put in there that's like, hey, you can't interact with this yet until maybe a future thing. I don't think they've really done that, if I remember correctly. Like even like in like Elden Ring, which we know DLC is coming, but there's nothing really in Elden Ring that like you can't that's uninteractable because of DLC.
Yeah, I mean, people are making that assumption. So
yeah, I mean, maybe it is, maybe it's not. Like I don't know. Like I'm thinking of like, yeah, I'm just thinking. No, I can't think of anything like in the Soul series that's like really done that sort of similar thing in their base.
Yeah, I'm just quickly Googling again, and people are like, what do you do with this thing? And people are like, nothing. You can't do anything with it. But it's very obvious that like it's interactable, and if you try interacting with it, it basically says like you can't do anything. It's like, what? So it's not just like sitting there as like a prop in the world. It's literally like an interactable object that just doesn't do anything. So yeah.
Right.
But yeah, pretty good game as far as my opinion is worth. So I played a handful of these off-brand Souls-like, and this is probably one of the better ones I've played. So
I'm still not far enough into it to really talk about it in length, but I am also in a similar boat where I'm like I'm starting to playing games for end of the year stuff and like games that like people have really said like a lot of good things about, but like on my end of the spectrum, it's a lesser known game called Wandering Sword. It's a game I've talked about on this podcast. This was like kind of the Chinese developed HD 2D wuxia style game that had like a battle system that was sort of like Live Alive and turn based mode, but it also has like a real time mode that you can toggle into as well in the game. So I picked that up on sale. I just barely started it. I heard a lot of great word of mouth about it, and this is something that I'm really looking forward to, like as I played the game, because people seem to be very very positive about this game. And just like Lords of the Fallen and Lies of P, it also has its roadmap to enhance the game even more. There's already several quality of life features added to the game, like a map that you can use to like see where all the cities and towns are.
Yeah, I'll get back to playing it too. I kind of just stopped playing it because the controller I used, the game just didn't support it for some weird reason, so I had to play with a mouse
Is
and
that your
keyboard.
Wii U controller?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, it didn't support it. Then I
Damn,
tried a
Chao.
different controller, and it's like, oh, I feel like half my buttons didn't work. So I just kind of got a little frustrated that the controllers I want to use to play.
The controller support is kind of wonky. I don't know if you can rebind them, but then like I play with a controller and like my DualShock 4 works fine, but like it is the way it's implemented isn't like as tactile as I want it to be. Like when you're like pressing like to move to like a certain part of the grid, the battlefield, like on the grid, like when you're moving around to press the grid, like it feels unresponsive. Like you have to like kind of wait like half a second for like the button to register for it to like move onto like the grid. It doesn't feel as snappy as like some other games might be. So like the controller supported is kind of iffy.
And if you try to play in controller, talking to the characters are kind of annoying too because the dialogues, it's like too big to fit in the box, so you have to like scroll it down in order to read the whole entire text. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know like if that's a recent adjustment thing, because I haven't like I'm still early on in the game. I did like the mentor dude just kind of kicked the bucket, so I'm still very early on. But I haven't had an issue with the dialogue box yet where it's like I had to scroll down or whatever, because they in the options they provided actually like a dialogue size option whether you want small, medium, or big. I don't know if that was there on launch or not. That's an option there now.
But
So I haven't.
yeah, that was a thing for me because if I was playing in controller, so during that time it didn't have any way to scroll down. I think now it's like you just press the right analog stick and just hold it down to scroll it down,
Oh,
which is
maybe.
But yeah, I had to use the keyboard and mouse to play this game, which kind of annoyed me because I don't like playing with a mouse and keyboard. At least that's
Mhm.
for me.
Mhm.
But well, I'll get back to it. It seems very interesting.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to putting more time into that. That's what I'll be working on. I also picked up a game called Dave the Diver. I'm sure a lot of people know what that is, and it seems to be a very popular game that came out this year. I've heard nothing but good things. A lot of people have had fun with it. I want to know what it's about. Steam says it's an RPG. From everything we've seen, it doesn't seem like a RPG, especially the traditional sense, but it's still, a fun game that people have come to a consensus on. Like, hey, even if there's an RPG or not, there's a fucking fun ass game. Like, all
The
right,
word that I hear thrown around a lot for that is addicting. Something about
Mm.
its loop is addicting.
I love addicting games. All right, moving on. That was Lies of P. James, you picked up. Oh, your Steam OLED arrived this week, and you've been messing around with it. Tell us about this new revision to the Steam Deck.
All right, yeah. So obviously last week we talked a bit about the announcements, some of the stuff that was it last week or the week before?
This is last week. Yep.
Yeah. So basically, we talked a bit about how Valve had announced a revision. You can listen to that previous podcast for all the little details that they shared. So I got my limited edition model in a couple of days ago, and I've been playing around with it for a bit. First off, there have been a lot of reports of folks having dead pixels, specifically, well, on both models, but a lot of folks with the limited edition. I'm not sure if that's because the limited edition has some issues with the screen, because it seems to be using a different supplier for the panel than the rest of the Steam Decks. or it could be that the majority of people that are buying a Steam Deck OLED at launch might be more predisposed to be getting the limited edition, so there's just more reports that way. Also, for all the people that have been reporting dead pixels, if you look on like the Reddit threads and the recent era threads and all that sort of stuff, most of the people in those threads are saying that they've been just fine. So I don't know. Your mileage may vary. I've checked my screen. I haven't found any dead pixels. So even if there is one and I just haven't seen it, it's not in a spot where it's noticeable. So I'm fine. But just figure I'd mention that like off the bat. Another thing that people found out is that, so one of the things that Valve said was that the OLED model Steam Deck was actually lighter than the original by about 30 grams, which is 5%, not major, but enough to be noticeable. And on Reddit, like almost immediately after people started getting their OLED decks in, somebody noticed because they had ordered a limited edition for themselves and then a 512 gigabyte OLED for their, I think, girlfriend or wife. They noticed that the limited edition was noticeably lighter than the regular OLED. And so they used the scale, and multiple people now like basically verified that for whatever reason, Valve didn't say it, but the limited edition model is another 20 grams lighter than the OLED. So compared to the original, it's like 50 grams lighter, which is absolutely noticeable. I was always one of those people that was like, yeah, the Steam Deck is heavier than most handhelds, but it's not that bad. But I'm just going to say it right now. Like, just like within minutes of holding the new model, I don't want to touch that LCD model ever again. Not just because of the screen, but because of the weight. And like I was talking about before, the weight distribution is just so much better. It's like I can actually use, like before, when I was playing it, like subconsciously I'd kind of like rest it on my legs if I was sitting down because it would help like with the weight. Now I can just hold it up and I don't have any strain because it's like it's almost like I think it's like 8% lighter, which again doesn't sound like a lot, but it really helps.
That's huge. Like for me, like when it comes to like I don't know, let's say the Vita for example, even though the 2000 models lost the OLED screen, I just love how much lighter and how much comfortable that is, and you know the charging and everything else. It's like I would just stick with that, you know.
Yeah. Ironically enough, I actually prefer the original model Vita because of the fact that it feels more comfortable to hold ergonomically. Because the 2000 model, for some games, it's better, but the 1000, because it's a bit thicker, it's easier to get a grip, and it's not really like kind of straining your actual hands. But I have big hands, so that might be part of it. But anyways, back to the Steam Deck. So yeah, I've been using it. The screen, as Valve said, is an OLED panel. It's up to 90 hertz. The first game that I tried on it was Star Ocean 2, The Second Story R. So when that launched earlier this month, I was in the middle of reviewing Persona 5 Tactica, so I hadn't gotten around to it. And by the time I was getting ready to start it was when Valve announced the OLED model. So I figured, I'll just wait until I get that to start it. Absolutely was the right decision. In battles and in towns, you can get 90 FPS, no problem. The world map, for whatever reason, seems to like to lock itself to 60, so I'm just sticking to 60 FPS overall for the better battery life, but it looks incredible on that screen. Like, it's just...
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a game, you know, it's very colorful.
A very shiny game.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I'm sure like the deeper blacks, the more vivid color quality, just everything just pops out, I imagine.
Yeah, and
on that OLED screen.
And since each like pixel is individually lit, you can actually turn the game, like the in-game brightness down quite a bit, and you're still able to have readability. It's not HDR, like proper HDR, but just because of like the way that OLEDs work, it really helps with the contrast, and it looks really good. But yeah, I've been enjoying that. I also downloaded a couple of other games, some stuff that I already had on my previous Steam Deck, some that I didn't have enough space for it to feel comfortable downloading. Like I installed Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate on there. And that game actually has HDR. Getting it working on the OLED deck right now is a little bit confusing. for two reasons. One, because Valve only recently added in support for HDR to Proton, the version of Proton that the game defaults to when it was verified is Proton 7.0-4, I believe. And that doesn't have support for HDR. If you enable it in-game, it's just going to be washed out. So you need to manually switch it to the latest stable version of Proton 8.0-4. Then HDR will work. I don't know if you need to specifically set a launch option to force it to launch in DirectX 12. When I was troubleshooting, I did put that in there, and it won't hurt because you're going to need DirectX 12 anyways for the HDR to function. But yeah, I booted it up because I was halfway through a playthrough that I started and prepped for the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth preview event that was in September. And so I booted it up, messed with some of the HDR settings to get it set up properly. That's one of the things with HDR is that it's great when it works, but sometimes games aren't really properly configured out of the box. Thankfully, Final Fantasy VII Remake's HDR settings are relatively self-explanatory. You've got peak luminance, minimum luminance, and that's not the exact word they use, but it's like basically like the peak brightness and the minimum brightness for the panel you can set. So I set that to 0 and 10, and then you have the setting for basically the paperwhite brightness of the game, and by default that's at 10, but that makes it look washed out. So you actually want to set it pretty low to like 3 or 4, because then that'll set, like, let's say the panel can get up to 1,000 nits. If you set it to 3 or 4, that's going to, I assume, be around 300 and 400 nits for the average parts of the screen. And then because of the luminance factor, it can still go brighter than that for the highlights, and it can go dimmer than that for the dark section. So just a little bit of tip for anyone that has picked up an OLED Steam Deck and is trying to figure out how exactly to get HDR to look right on your system. But yeah, and it's like I downloaded the dynamic resolution removal mod. I set it to high settings by notch down shadows to low resolution because you really can't tell the difference on the screen. And then I capped it at 40 FPS, and it runs perfectly. It looks great. It looks sharp. It runs really, really well. So it's like I think I'm gonna finish up that playthrough on
How
the
far
OLED
are you
deck.
in that game?
Just finished up chapter 11.
Okay.
It's got long ways to go.
No, you're
Well,
right.
I mean,
it's pretty close to the end.
Is
yeah,
it? It's
yeah,
like
so
7 more chapters, isn't it?
well, it's 7 more chapters, but it's like one of those games. Like just looking at it, it's like it's one of those games where it's a bit front loaded, and like a lot of RPGs have this thing where the last couple of chapters are shorter because it's like once you hit a certain point, it's kind of like it's like a roller coaster. It's just like
Snowball going downhill.
Yeah, you only have
Yeah.
a couple of hours left, really.
yeah. But yeah, it's runs great. I also already had like Monster Hunter World on my previous stack. I installed it on this one, and HDR looks great there. But yeah, it's like the combination of the much better battery life. I had Star Ocean 2, the second story arc, capped at 60 FPS for the battery life. I get like I get like 5 hours of battery life from a full charge, which, considering it's 60 FPS, and that's really good. Like, I don't know what the battery life is specifically on Switch, but I'm sure that's like 30 FPS, a bit lower settings. It looks great, runs great, and like I said earlier, like the difference in battery life is really, really noticeable, and it makes it easier to just use it without stressing about, oh, I'm gonna have to be right next to an outlet if I'm playing a game like Final Fantasy VII Remake, which, by the way, on the settings I've been using, it seems to have about 3 hours, which again is really good for like it's a current generation game because it's it's based off the PS5 version.
I kind of see this device as kind of like an entry level HDR. Like if you don't know like really like what you're doing with HDR, if you should commit or not to like getting an HDR setup, I think this is like a really interesting, affordable device to kind of just dip your feet into like what HDR looks like, especially like on the go. Like I
You
think
want
there's
to know?
something. Go for it.
You want to know something that I'm really hopeful will happen?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of devs, especially recently, have very clearly been testing their games on Steam Deck.
Mhm.
When I reviewed Persona 5 Tactica, one of the things I pointed out was that the game actually knows when it's being run on Steam Deck and will automatically call it a software keyboard whenever you need to use it. And recently Monster Hunter World was patched to do the same thing.
Yeah.
If devs are going to continue developing for Steam Deck, I hope they pick up an OLED version, which again, they start at like $550 for an OLED Steam Deck. And it is a proper HDR display. Peak 1000 nits, it's OLED, it has really great contrast. One of the main problems that HDR and PC has right now, well, it's two things. One, up until recently, there haven't been proper HDR displays that are worth a damn on PC. It's only been within the last year with the advent of mini LED and proper OLED panels that aren't just using a fucking LG TV that there's monitors worth buying if you specifically want to use HDR on PC. Windows 11 has a lot of issues, but the software side of things on Windows 11 is a lot better for HDR these days too. And the other thing is that devs, a lot of those older HDR implementations, because there wasn't, like if you're developing on PC and you're using monitors in development, up until recently, you haven't had a proper HDR display to test to make sure that your HDR implementation is actually worth a damn.
Mhm.
So like I'm saying, it's like I'm hoping devs pick up an OLED Steam Deck, and I hope they test their HDR implementations on it, because $550 is actually pretty cheap for a reference HDR monitor. And I think it could, I hope, I'm not saying this will happen, but I hope that it could be kind of like an entry point for even like smaller developers if they want to support HDR, but they don't know how it's supposed to look. If you can get it looking right on an OLED Steam Deck, that's better than like 90% of HDR implementations right now on both console and PC. So here's hoping.
Yeah, I mean, if that becomes basically like the default standard of Steam Decks, like moving forward, like as they move into like the next iteration of the Steam Deck, and that just becomes like the baseline. I think,
Yeah.
I think the adoption rate has been pretty healthy.
And
I
I'll
think
be
it'll
honest,
only grow.
I like, sure, maybe they want to make it VRR capable. Maybe they want to give it like 120 hertz for the Steam Deck too. The base specs of this screen, I don't think they need to change for the Steam Deck too. Some people will say, oh, I want a higher resolution, but for a handheld, 800p looks just fine, and you don't need to go higher than that. I would much rather them focus on the performance and the battery life, because visually, it looks fine.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
I think that's a sweet spot.
Yeah, I've been really happy with it. I'm going to be selling my LCD Steam Deck ASAP. If you've been on the fence about a Steam Deck for whatever reason, if you thought, oh, it hasn't had enough support, or if you've been worried about Valve supporting their hardware and software, this is like, I'd say, like, if you want to get any sort of handheld PC, the OLED Steam Deck is the one I would suggest, because yeah, sure, the ROG Ally and the Legion Go are going to be more powerful, but if you actually want to use it as a, like, basically a consoleized PC, like, you're not, like, the OLED Steam Deck's battery life has got to be something like at least more than twice as much as like those other two systems. It's insane just how much of a difference that makes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you value the portability factor and not having to like always be wired up to like a nearby outlet while you're playing a game, this seems to be the way to go.
Yeah.
For extended play times, just uh, in general, like you can rely on Valve for like future support, like down the line, like 5 to 7 years down the line. Like,
Steam controller still gets updates. Like
yes.
the Steam Link just got an update a few months ago, so it's like they support their stuff with software at least. And the Steam Deck has been successful enough. I mean, they've already said they're going to make a Steam Deck too, so it's like, yeah. I mean, I was already a big fan of the Steam Deck, but like they said, this feels like the fully realized vision of what they wanted at launch. The software's in a much better space. The hardware's in a much better space. One little thing that I didn't even mention. When you were playing like particularly demanding game on the original Steam Deck, the back of the unit would get really, really hot.
Yes.
And if you tried to use any of the grip buttons, it would be immediately noticeable because you could accidentally touch one of the hot spots. And it's like you wouldn't burn yourself, but it would be uncomfortable. That's another thing that's different with this one. Because of it using less power overall, it doesn't get that hot. Like it feels like warm, but not uncomfortably so. It just feels like how warm like a Switch gets. It literally everything that I had complaints about with the original has basically been fixed.
And that's just within, pretty much a year since the original Steam Deck came out. So, it's,
Well, almost two, because it came out in
almost.
February last year.
Yeah. Okay. It's about a year and a half. We'll see. We'll see. This is the Steam Deck project has really paid off for them, and I think it's been really healthy for just the industry overall.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. Thanks for the initial report on the Steam Deck OLED. I'm sure. I'm actually curious, like what RPGs like officially support HDR now with the Steam Deck OLED.
I should ask Alex if he thinks it would be
Yeah,
worth
that'd be
making an
that'd
article
be
about it.
that'd be interesting because I don't know, like, I don't really keep with HDR at all, and I'm interested, like, now that Steam Deck OLED is like a much more affordable and like easier gateway into the HDR space. Like having like a handy list of like, oh, these RPGs support HDR from the get go. It's like, oh, okay, if I was ever to pick up this or a Steam Deck 2 that obviously will have an OLED panel and will support HDR, like I would want to have a reference list of like, oh, I actually want to see it for myself because I haven't really dabbled into HDR yet. I see it.
Yeah, I know that Elden Ring supports it. I know it's not an RPG, but also Armored Core.
Liza P supports HDR.
There we
Yep.
go.
Yep, I know Liza P does. Final Fantasy 15 does.
Does it? Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm looking because there's a PC gaming wiki list of game. It's not perfect. There's some on here that don't actually support HDR. Like it lists Final Fantasy 14. It doesn't. It supports auto HDR on Windows 11, but it doesn't have like a native HDR.
There are some games that say they support HDR, and I'm like, really? Like, for example, I don't know why I remember this one, but when Xseed ported East Memories of Salsetta to PC, there's like an HDR toggle. I'm like, there's no way this game actually has HDR. You're just like saturating colors or something.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's a Vita game.
This won't run on Steam. Well, maybe it can now if you cap it at 30 FPS. But Wild Hearts has a decent HDR implementation, but it's also one of those games where like the default settings are kind of. That's one of the things with HDR. Most games, you're going to have to do a few settings tweaks to make it look as good as it can be. Some games like Ori and the Will of the Wisps will look really good. I think it's Will of the Wisps or was it the? Yeah, that's the second one. Okay, but yeah, it's like some games will look really good. Wait, apparently Octopath Traveler 1 supports HDR, 2 doesn't. Does 1 actually support HDR?
Something to try out.
You can actually force it in the INI file. I bet you could probably do that for Octopath 2 because it's an Unreal Engine game, so you can. Interesting.
So like a handy list like that, like already has it like as an option available, and if it's real, and ones that have like, so you have to like kind of enable it through an INI file. Be a pretty handy list for people who want to give that a go. I think since I'm a neophyte to HDR, so when it comes to like configuring HDR settings per game, does it remember the settings per game, or is it something you tweak manually every time?
It will remember it per game. It's just like it's game settings. Like the screen itself, the only thing you have to worry about is the screen like max brightness, and that's basically it. Just anything specifically for individual games is going to be like a graphics setting that you change in game.
Got it. Okay, cool. So that was the Steam Deck OLED. Thank you for the report, James.
Quick addendum.
Yeah.
So first of all, Liza P does support HDR, and it just gives you a brightness and a contrast slider. So it doesn't really let you set like your luminescence or whatnot. But you can set those 2 sliders for HDR to your liking. But I was actually just messing with it just now, on and off. And I think a lot of people, when they think about HDR, they think of like brighter colors. But like in a game like Lies of P, when I turn off HDR, it's actually like everything is brighter when you turn HDR off, because it's such a, it's a game like set at night and in dark places. But like it's the contrast in those darker blacks and grays that really pop out when you have the HDR on too, with like
Yeah,
the individual light sources around here and there. Whereas when you turn HDR off, it's just kind of all a similar tone, brighter but
yeah,
less contrast. So
yeah. That's the thing that is kind of like a misnomer of HDR. I feel like a lot of people still have, where it's like everyone always talks about, ooh, look at how bright it can get with HDR. When it's like, yeah, the highlights are like neat, but that's not the main reason you want HDR. You want the contrast within the same
right.
image, because like by default in SDR, the game doesn't have it, isn't like detailing any like, okay, this part of the screen needs to be specifically dimmer than the other, this part needs to be brighter. Yeah, you'll have different colors, and on like an OLED display, like I was saying with Star Ocean: The Second Story R, you'll get better contrast just based off of the fact that like OLED as a panel technology, like each pixel is self like lit. So if a part of the screen's black, it's going to be black. But there's not going to be like, if the pixel's on, there's not going to be any difference in brightness, because it's not HDR. If it is HDR, the game's actually telling the panel, okay, this part, like these pixels need to be dimmer, these pixels need to be brighter. And it's that like contrast between bright and dark that makes HDR HDR. It's not just about how bright it can get, it's about having that depth to the image. And it's, yeah.
And also another addendum, I said when I was talking about Lies of P that the director talked about like Korean game development, like milestone. I was wrong. It wasn't actually the director of the game, who was Ji-won Choi. When Lies of P sold 1 million, it was actually the co-CEO of NeoWiz, Sung Choi Kim, hope I pronounced his name correctly, who said, "This incredible milestone for Lies of P proves the potential of Korean console games on the global stage." So I had referenced that this was said, and I just wanted to get it, the actual statement by the actual person. So
okay, sounds good. Chao.
Yes.
I wrote that on our podcast doc that you went on some Black Friday adventures. It's Chao's Black Friday adventures, because you mentioned you actually went out and about with your brother on Black Friday to get some stuff. What happened, Chao?
What happened is our household has this TV with free lines in it, free deadlines, and we hate this TV so much to the point that we tell our dad, let's just get rid of it. We'll buy you a new TV if it has to be. And our dad's really reluctant of getting rid of this TV. I don't know why. You can see there's free deadlines.
How old is this TV?
Like 4 years.
Okay.
My dad is, let's just say he doesn't live a very exotic lifestyle. But anyways, we were trying to tell him to get rid of it, and we told him we finally found an excuse to get rid of it. We got this Black Friday deal at, was it Real Canadian Superstore. They have this promo where it says that if you spend $100, you could get $40 back in points with their program. So if you buy a TV for $800, you get $320 back in points, right? Huge, right? So we used that excuse to get rid of it. So basically, we went there, got it, but my dad's card in that program, apparently, I don't know. He doesn't know his own password, because my parents are terrible with technology. So they'd be like, "Oh yeah, so let's just reset the password for my dad." Then you're locked out. You can't use your points to buy things for a couple of days, because they think that your card's stolen or something.
Oh god.
Security measures. So we're like, "Oh fuck, we're spending here for like a couple hours waiting to get these points to work." And then it's like, "Oh shit." But anyways, we got that. We just like, screw it. We'll just save the points for another time. And then after that, we kind of like end up going to electric landfill to throw out all these electronics that we don't need, because there's lots of like kind of like junk. I don't know. Like, I guess we end up hoarding a lot of these electronics for some reason. So we kind of end up throwing like probably like 3 TVs out, 2 keyboards.
What if you need them later?
We'll just buy new things. That's our lifestyle now, I guess. We got that, and then bought a bunch of random games for Black Friday.
Anything you want to mention here?
I ended up triple dipping on a game, which is kind of awkward.
Okay. Which game was this?
I triple dipped on Azure. Was it Azure Striker Gunvolt 3?
Okay.
I ended up triple dipping. I got like the Switch version like a long time ago, but now I got like the PS5 version because it's on a Black Friday sale. I decided to go for a PC version as well. It's like a good game. It's a good game, but it's like, do I really need a triple dip? The reason I got it on the PS5 is because the guy that always shares game with me, I was like, it's on sale. I can afford it. You can try this. I want to introduce him to this series too. So it's like, I end up triple dipping on this game for no good reason.
Okay.
But there's all that kind of stuff. And then I bought like a new controller. I got this 8BitDo Ultimate Bluetooth controller. I just got from Black Friday.
What makes it ultimate? Why is it called the ultimate Bluetooth controller?
Well, they have a 2.4 gigahertz version, which has what is it? Where you have to use a dongle, but the Bluetooth version is kind of like both features in one. It has a Bluetooth feature and a dongle, right? And it has twice the battery life. And the thing that makes it better, it has Hall trigger effect sticks, so you can have sticks that take longer to drift, or it's like an old technology from the Sega Dreamcast days where the technology is less prone to drifting or whatever.
The old technology.
You can read it up. It's they had this
This is sort of funny, but for my day job as a scientist, I actually do Hall effect analysis, which is something completely different. It's basically when you apply a magnetic field and electrons move in accordance to the magnetic field. I have no idea what that has to do with analog sticks, although I know they exist.
It's kind of like the same idea, because they're using a magnetic thing to kind of like course correct the stick in case of like drifting kind of thing.
But yeah, the analysis I do is literally just looking at like charge carriers when you move a magnet, because that's magnet. If you have an electron charged particle in a magnetic field, it moves, and that is basically the Hall effect. Very brief version of it. So
I'm sorry, but the mental image I have now is like Adam putting up a magnifying glass on Chao's new controller here onto the stick.
But yeah, like this controller is actually like amazing. But I was almost thinking about canceling my order because they had a collaboration with Genshin. It's on a character I do not like.
Oh yeah, which is the character?
It's Chong Yun. He's a Cairo user. And I was talking to my friend all day about it, and we're like, if this is a Ganyu controller, it would be like instant pre-order. Then later on, we're like, we could just pretend it's a Ganyu controller. It's blue anyways, or something like that. And then we're like, okay, wait. It's like, it's actually the inferior controller. Now I have an excuse not to buy it then. But, that was basically it.
It's so funny how they have basically two identically looking versions of that controller, but the only way you can tell which one is the Hall effect one is if it has the switch button layout. It's like...
we actually spent like 10 minutes reading the specs. It's like, wait a minute, this is the shittier controller. It's like, but they're charging like $30 more. We're like, damn, that's how they get you.
But so this is where the branding the controller worked against them, because you're like, I don't like this character. Hell
yeah,
no.
Then it's like, if I don't like the character, I'll just pretend that it's a Ganyu controller. But then like I look at the specs, like, wait a minute, you're using the shittier specs to trick me. It's like, okay.
I would have loved it if you still got that controller and and then print or tape Ganyu's head over the character, like it's a Ganyu controller.
Like, you want money from me? It's like instant money from me. But it's like, even my friends like, if it was a Ganyu controller, that's an instant purchase from me too. But no, it's like because of the Chongyun controller, we spent like hours debating, should we get this controller?
That just reminds me, they're holding that closed beta for Zenless Zone Zero, right?
So Chao, I know Chao is not a big fan of Zenless Zone Zero so far, right? I have a friend who kind of gave up on Genshin, but got really hooked by Honkai Star Rail. And they're like, I'm going to try Zenless Zone Zero, and they don't like it. They got in the beta, and they don't like it.
I feel vindicated. I mean, It looks like crap to me. But Josh Shu's playing it, maybe, I heard. I heard you got into it.
I think Josh too got into it. I don't know if he likes it or not. I've heard it's very mixed. Some people really like it, some people really don't. So and then some people from the outside are like, the streamer that I was watching played more of the Snake mini game inside it than the actual action combat of the game itself. So I don't know. Seems like it needs more time in the oven, this closed beta, but who knows? Yeah. All right, nice Black Friday adventures, Chao. I also know that you were playing a little bit of this game called Dead of the Brain.
I actually beat it. It has the most hilarious ending ever.
Okay, so what is it? Two, why does it have a hilarious ending?
Okay, so I'll spoil the ending first. It's like, hey, everyone's dead. Do you want to go out for sushi? It's like, yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing ending.
The
Actually,
ending, okay.
I would love some sushi. Thank you. Everyone's dead around me, but I would love some sushi.
But anyways, this is what is it? It's like an erotic, like zombie novel or visual novel. It plays like Snatcher. Let's just say that. I'm not sure people are familiar with Snatcher is, but Snatcher is like it's a visual novel from Konami, made by Hideo Kojima back in the day.
Mhm.
It's basically you basically talk to these people to get clues to where to go, and then sometimes certain parts like you get attacked by somebody, and during the attacking you basically have to use your light gun to shoot at the enemy to get through the game. And this game kind of carries the same kind of mechanics to get through certain parts.
So is this like a rail shooter or an adventure type game?
I would say both. But
Okay.
the segment with like the shooting part's kind of like very small compared to like the navigation. But anyways, it's like a zombie. It's like Night of the Living Dead kind of story, right? Basically, this main character is kind of like a deadbeat. He gets called by the scientist to come to work. He's like, no, I don't want to go to work. It's like, I hate you, basically. And then the scientist basically blackmails him, saying that, hey, I know you're cheating on your girlfriend, so come on, come to my place. So that's kind of like how the intro starts. So he's like, okay, so he basically goes to his place, and he basically brought this cat back to life with the serum, but it turns into them like super aggressive, right? And then a cop decides to come in to check out. It's like, hey, what's that cat noise that your neighbors keep complaining about? And then the cops, the scientist is kind of stupid in my opinion. He kind of caused this problem at the beginning. He's like, nothing really. But he basically told the cop to go check, and goes to where the dead cat is, and it basically comes in like a zombie and just slashes the cop's throat and kills the cop.
Okay,
And
how do the zombies work in this thing? Is it like when a zombie bites you turn into one, or is it like only through initial infection?
The zombie, how it works is like, okay, they were injected by the serum first,
Yeah.
right?
All
And then once they get infected by the serum, then they come back to life as like a zombie version of themselves, and they can only affect like similar creatures. So humans can only affect humans. Cats can only affect cats. But anyways, they killed that cop, and they're like, "Oh my god, we killed some." It's like that cat killed somebody. We're basically charged for murder for this cop. What do we do? And they're like, "Well, we could try to use the serum to bring that guy back to life."
Okay.
And then they brought that guy back to life, and he's like a fucking zombie. And then they killed him anyways. They shoot him like 5 times, killed him, and he ran away. But while he's running away, the scientist brought a bunch of those life serum with him, and for some reason the laboratory is near a graveyard for some reason.
Okay.
And while
is that true for you, Adam? Is your lab by a graveyard?
Not that I know of.
Okay. All right.
So, anyways, he was in a panic. He drops all the serum, and it looked like all the zombies are brought in by that life serum because it's, he's in the graveyard. Obviously, there's a lot of reference to like other movies in this kind of novel. I mean, like the first grave that you see, it says Stephen King. That's what it says on the name.
Wow, who would have thought?
Stephen King is a zombie, apparently.
Oh.
But anyways, you get through that, they get things, and somehow the whole town's infested somehow for some reason. And the scientist is like, well, it can't be me, because it'll take, a couple a few hours before this thing started, and there's already the whole town's filled with zombies. So obviously something doesn't add up, right?
Mhm.
And then the main character's girlfriend somehow is able to survive this zombie apocalypse to run to where his house is, and then the story basically goes from you go to the police station to find clues, but everyone in the police station's dead, and then it goes to to the hotel. Basically, that's where they're hiding, and there's like several plot twists that comes to mind in this. It's like the virus isn't really like spread by the scientists; somebody else was behind this, and it goes all kind of shenanigan. It even gets all like Terminator at the end. For some reason, the final bad guy's a fucking robot.
Oh, okay, great.
So, anyways, that's this visual novel. It's like there's a fan translation for the first game for
What system does this release on, and what year did it release in?
I think it's 1992. I think it was released on the PC 98.
Oh,
And then they made like a port for the PC Engine. The PC Engine basically cuts out the nudity. Like there's parts where the main characters he's kind of like
what's the point?
like basically the nudity would be like okay, it's like in the PC Engine version, like the girl is still naked, but she probably has her hands like covering her breasts or something, right? Or there's this one part where the main girl gets kidnapped and she's completely nude in like the PC 98 version, but if you play on PC Engine, there's like a piece of cloth that's covering her body or something.
That's it. No, not worth it.
But the violence is still there. Like, you know, you get to see people's heads get sliced off, and you know that's still kept in there in the PC Engine version for some reason. So I guess that's okay. You know, violence is always cool in video games, but nudity isn't. So, but that's basically it. And there's a sequel to this, and apparently the sequel does not have a translation, but the sequel is like twice as long. Like you could beat this game in like 2 hours if you know the where to go, but it's kind of like it's very intuitive. It's like playing the first Famicom Detective Club. I'm not sure anybody else plays that besides me and James. You'd have to like talk to everyone and click every single option before you kind of figure out where to go. So I'm guessing nobody did that. Okay,
I remember that criticism.
Yeah,
but you basically got to do this. Like one part, I got like stuck very early in the game because it's just kind of like very dumb. It's like, okay, the main character is like the way he interacts. It feels so stupid. It's like, oh yeah, I found a gun, but I'm not going to pick it up because the gun has no bullets. It's like, just take it. You can find bullets later.
No, I'm not going to take it.
Oh, it'll be like that, and then there's a certain part I got stuck because it's like you had to examine like this dead corpse's brains because then you could go back downstairs to tell the scientists, like, oh wait, it's like I found the zombie's weakness. You just blow their brains out. Oh, who would have guessed? But anyways, that's like the zombie game for you. It's kind of interesting. It has a lot of movie reference, but certain parts I just feel like, man, this is so stupid. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Sounds like a masterpiece, a hidden masterpiece.
It's like, but that's dead of the brain for you.
All right, thanks for sharing. That was that's, like you said, that's dead of the brain.
I feel like I should have shared this during Halloween, but I'm always a month late on things, I guess.
It'll be interesting to hear what your holiday game is like around Christmas. Then it'll be like a Thanksgiving PC 98 game. Okay, we had a few articles coming out this week. We have a review for In Stars and Time, and that was reviewed by Junior Miai.
I might try this game. I've seen a lot of praise for it in terms of just like its heart. It's one of those sorts of indie games where it's just got a lot of heart and character and theming and meaning to it, and it's not that long. And
yeah, this came out on the 20th. The developers insert disc 5, and this is the sort of like a grayscale, not monochromatic. It's not just black and white. It's more desaturated grayscale RPG, and I'm not sure. Is it sort of like along the lines of like something like Mother or Undertale? I'm not.
I think it's in that realm. Yeah.
Okay.
So in Junior's review, he kind of ironically, not genuinely, called it like a sad indie game about depression. And again, that's not, he was not genuinely thinking that, but you know, it's kind of in that realm where it's just like this game has a lot of heart and feeling and meaning to it. And, you know, I don't know how it it has like a turn-based combat system, but it feels like this isn't really like for gearhead RPG fans, but more for like, people who like the characters and the art and whatnot.
You're there
So
more for the ride rather than mechanics.
yeah, not a mechanics focused game. But yeah, I'm kind of curious about it because a lot of people I know a handful of people who have played it who like it a lot. So I'm curious.
Okay.
And, you know, like I said, opening up this podcast, we have this time of year just want to get some games under our belt before the end of the year stuff. I have no idea if In Stars in Time will come anywhere close to end of the year consideration, but I don't know until I play it, like, and we
Exactly.
consider everything: indie games, full game, big games, Western.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for us.
Yeah.
Wherever they come from. If you're great, then you're great.
Yeah, we've highlighted several indie games in our end of the year stuff, including like Atelier Libre last year. So
That's
I mean, there's a Switch version that just came out. I mean, a week ago. I tried the Switch version. It is great. It plays just like the PC version. I know some people complain in the forums like, "Oh, what is this slow down when you do these attacks?" Like, well, you know what? It's the same thing in the PC version.
And there's a bite-sized RPGs in Stars in Time. Junior said it took about 12 hours to complete, and I was like attempting to do every side quest in it.
Mm-hmm.
So we love small games around here. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then Alex, Big Boss Alex, wrote something for a game called Final Fantasy 15 War for EOS, and
End of service.
Yeah, we call it War for End of Service. That's right. It's like a mobile spin-off that's sort of like a new Empire, and I believe Paige wrote. No, he didn't. Did Paige write about
it? Was
a new Empire?
It was I forget what they go by now, but Liz. She
Oh,
changed her
right,
name.
right.
I don't. So
Chris, I believe.
Chris.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
They wrote it, and I did not read Alex's piece here on this new one. He kind of amusingly calls it exercise and franchise undermining misery. That sounds pretty bad. But he says, but it isn't all bad. It's like, okay.
I don't know. I think it seems all bad.
I'm sorry, Alex. I just don't care about this game in any direction to read this. Like, I forgot it even existed.
At least you're honest about it. No sugarcoating this incident.
Yeah, well, Godspeed to Alex for covering.
But apparently, according to like Sensor Tower or whatnot, that first game, whatever it was called, A New Empire, was that what it was? Like actually raked in like a significant chunk of money. Okay. Good job.
I assume some of those. I assume some of those. Some of the money that raked in. I assume the royalty fees all went to Square.
Yeah. Because they licensed it out. Machine Games, right? That's the developer who makes it, and then I hope I had that right. Yeah. So.
Or Machine Zone.
I knew that. Oh, Machine Games Zone. I forget.
So yeah. Well, I'm not going to tell you to read this article. Okay. I'm not going to tell you to read this article, but we're obligated to mention it.
I knew this game like released, but I don't know. I don't care.
Don't care. Great, awesome. Moving on to the news. The big news for this week is that remember that Atelier mobile game that came out earlier this year in Japan? That's getting an official Western release next year under the name Atelier Resleriana, Forgotten Alchemy, and the Polar Night Liberator.
I only know two things about this game.
Okay.
One, apparently the monetization is out of control.
I heard that in the Japanese version, was it for a 10 roll, it costs you 6,000 yen.
You ruined my joke, Chao.
Damn.
I've heard two things about this game. One, the monetization is out of control. Two, the jiggle physics are out of control.
Okay, I actually remember this too. That there's like a shake setting in this game that was like sometimes I look at the Gacha Gaming Reddit because it is some of the funniest threads you'll find from people who are very, I guess they're connoisseurs of the genre, and they were talking about the shake setting, and there's this video of like the shake setting. Like you turn this shake setting into like I don't know a certain setting. Like Adam said, like the fucking jiggle physics are just like out of control when you set this setting up.
So
In
they're
this game.
following a page from Dare Live 2. Set your age to 99 to turn on juggle physics to the max.
But if you for actual info on this game, like the main thing that separates this game is one. Gust and Koei Tecmo themselves consider this a mainline game, like unlike Atelier
Yeah,
Online.
they called like when they were teasing it, they called it like A25, as in this is the 25th Atelier game. So by their definition, it's mainline.
Mhm.
We didn't decide that; they did. So.
Yes. Two. This has a dual protagonist system. One is Resna, and the other is Valeria, and they actually have like their own separate party members. And throughout this dual storyline, I don't exactly know how the flow of the game is in terms of like how the story structure is, but I assume there'll be some stages where you see things from Resna's side, and then others you see things from Valeria's side, and whatever separate adventures they're doing. Um, Obviously, since this is a mobile gacha game, you roll for characters, and since what makes money, characters that already exist in that series. So pretty much a shitload of Atelier characters, past Atelier characters show up this game. You have Ryza, Fierce, Eska, Logi, Morona, Totori, Heathgriff, Esti, etc. And they just add more and more on the Japanese release as well. And it is, it looks like what a mobile gacha game has. It has stages where you can grind, stages that you can consume stamina on. There's there'll be a synthesis system in this game.
I feel like every time I read about this game, there's always like controversy about the monetization or something. Commercials that that makes people outrage. Everything. There's always something like negative when I hear about this game. When I read the gacha subreddit about this.
Yeah, it probably makes them bank either way, for better or for worse. Seems to be probably doing well over. So, I mean, but the interesting part about it is it's not only just coming to mobile device, it's also getting a PC via Steam release. It did also in Japan as well. So it's interesting seeing that, like, hey, you know, this gacha game is also just coming. It seems like day and date with its mobile release, which more and more games are starting to do, not necessarily through Steam, but their own PC clients. Like Reverse 1999 was a game that like day and date it launched with its PC client, and more past games have been getting PC clients. Like Another Eden eventually got a PC client. Glass Claudia, Punishing Gray Raven.
Ever Crisis is getting one.
Yes, Ever Crisis. Of course.
Isn't that out or?
It's not. PC version's not out yet.
Yeah, that's a Steam release coming to Ever Crisis.
The Steam page popped up.
Yeah. So it seems like more and more just like mobile first games are also starting to consider just releasing their stuff on PC. Probably an easy way to get more revenue as well. They'd have to deal with the certification process that consoles have. It is what it is. So that's coming. The global release of Atelier Resleriana coming sometime next year. For Atelier fans, there's your next Atelier game. Right, James?
Yeah.
Now, I'm trying to look it up right now. It's probably worth noting that this game is not being like supported or run by like Koei Tecmo's Western branches.
Yes, this from it's being done by Akatsuki Games.
And like Koei Tecmo Japan. Like when we got the like the the press release on this, like we have emails for like people at koeitecmo.co.jp as like our contacts. It's not like the Western Koei Tecmo branches. I don't know if those accounts, those Twitter accounts or whatever, have even like posted about this. Like it's kind of a separate thing. I don't quite actually know in terms of exactly how it's being handled.
honestly, from the sounds of it, that might be a good sign for folks that actually want to play this. If it's being handled by the Japan side, that might suggest there's a possibility it's worldwide servers.
I don't know if it will because it's coming so late. They usually don't. They usually don't merge them. And maybe eventually down the line they merge them, depending on like if the Western release is starting to dwindle, they have to accelerate content. But since there's content disparity right away, I don't think it matters. It had to be something like Dragalia Lost, where like it had a worldwide simultaneous release, so there was no need to, um, you know, discriminate between both um the the servers for it. So I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, that's
I'm just quickly scrolling down the Koei Tecmo Europe. Oh no, so they retweeted the announcement, but
okay.
it still feels like it's separate. Like for example, just back,
I think it's a separate Western server.
the press release that we got, it was from a different. It wasn't from where we normally get information from Koei Tecmo games, like Atelier or Fate Samurai or Neo or Wolong or whatever. It was from like a different place. So it's
Yeah.
like it's being handled and marketed from like a different team.
It's actually pretty rare for a game to like actually have like unified servers worldwide. Like even
Mhm.
games like say Aether Gazer that pretty much released day and date on between the Japanese and global release, their update times are totally separate, and so like banners will start earlier in the Japanese server than the global server on that, and that's just how their update cycle is. Even though
There
they're
was some game that released recently. I'm trying to remember what it was, where they announced like a European version and a North American version, but they were being handled by totally different groups, and they even had to like put a disclaimer on their website. I'm trying to remember what that was. Ah, shoot,
I don't know.
did my
Was
tongue.
was this also a mobile game?
I think so.
No,
It was
I
very
don't know.
weird. I don't remember it.
Very weird. I don't know. The mobile game market's very weird in general. Um, we also got an announcement of a brand new game from Nippon Ichi Software. It is a roguelike strategy RPG called Bar Stella Abyss. And this is set to release in Japan on February 29th for PS5, PS4, and Switch. This is a really neat looking game that I hope gets released sometime next year. You worked with
Usually,
this
NIS America is
type.
pretty good at localizing their
Yeah.
NIS games, with the exception of some of like the visual novel stuff. So hopefully,
Yeah, so I briefly skimmed through this when it was first brought up on Gamatsu, and then you and Kite worked on it for RPG site. Tell me a little bit more about this Bar Stella Abyss game.
so it seems like a mix between some of those like bar or coffee simulators. There's what Coffee Talk. I haven't played
Mhm.
these. There's Coffee Talk, and then there's like um Valhalla or
Oh,
whatever,
yes.
which are, I haven't played these, but they're sort of like dialogue simulators sort of things with patrons and whatnot, as far as I understand. But this sort of like takes that concept, which is there, and then kind of mixes it in with like a roguelike dungeon crawler. And it is a roguelike in that it does talk about a system where you go into a dungeon, and then like when you are defeated, you kind of fall back and you make some progress, but you lose some progress. I don't know exactly how it all works at this point.
Kite used the term drunk world when
Yes,
when
so you end up going into like this dream world dungeon because you're at a bar and you're drinking with your patrons, and like depending on how and how much you drink, you end up getting drunk and you go into the drunk world.
Mm,
I guess it's called like the world is called like Yo no Sekai,
okay.
which is like translating that yo or yoi word. Apologies, I don't
Hmm.
speak Japanese.
It's like a pun
It can be a
on
pun
drunk,
that
right?
can mean drunk. So like drunk world is what we're calling it. We don't know what it'll be localized as, but it's a world that it could be like the stupor world or something. I don't know.
It's interesting, like how would you rate this in the West, right? Because there's probably a high possibility
Oh
this might be
yeah,
rated M.
yeah, M just for all the alcohol. Because I know you can have some alcohol in a teen game, but I don't know if it's like focus on that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, but but yeah, there's like a roguelike dungeon crawling system to it. There's like 10 different patrons that you can discuss where you can talk with, and they can like tag along with you in the dungeon. It's actually a tactical RPG, so there's like a grid and everything. So there's shops that you can buy stuff with. Let's see, I'm looking through his
And the general
post
art
here.
style and character design is very striking.
Mhm.
I don't know, is it the Caligula character designer? It kind of looks like the Caligula. I'm
Might
not
be.
100% sure because they have kind of have like that pale demeanor on them, but it's very expressive as well. So yeah, if you haven't seen this game yet, definitely go check out our post on it. There's a lot of screenshots on it with the characters, a teaser trailer, and yeah, crossing my fingers that this will get released next year.
Yeah,
over
some of
here in the West.
these visuals are like, man, the art style is pretty striking.
Yeah. And once again, like we mentioned it like damn near every time, but like NIS is very good at like kind of just like developing just like brand new IPs pretty much.
Yeah.
Like they just
Yeah.
don't stick to this Gaia and just like long running series. They usually go for just like brand new things without any predecessor behind them. It's really cool.
Yeah, they just announced a different game that's not an RPG at all. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
They have
1 second, sorry.
Yeah. Because that
Well, they have
it's like
Cicatrice, which is kind of a weird looking RPG, but it's interesting.
what is that?
Cicatrice?
Yeah.
We covered it.
Was it? Wait, how do you spell that? That starts with X. That's right.
The
Okay.
one with the really, really good box art.
Okay, I remember now. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So I was like cicatrice because I was thinking of S. I was like, what? No, it's Xicatrice.
Yeah.
And that's like the one
It's
in
a
the
French word, or
classroom.
it's based off a French word, so I apologize if I didn't pronounce it properly.
Like, I don't know. Okay, yes, that's right. That was them.
And then they also announced this other game.
Which one?
Competitive puzzle game. The Google translation is Creation Puzzle Yumero Yuram. Like, I don't know.
Also, just a quick correction. Cicatrice is an RPG. You can actually tell by.
I said that was an RPG. But this one wasn't.
Right.
So.
That one, yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, my point is that I agree with Josh, and we talked about it before how NIS just releases a bunch of these kind of like new and different things. Sometimes they work well. Sometimes, like I like the Void Terrarium. They made a sequel to that. I never played it. But then sometimes they don't work so well, like Poison Control. That game is bad. But I just appreciate, they're not just stuck in like this is the only franchise we ever do mode.
Yes.
Which
Interesting. So on Amazon Japan, at least based off of the ratings, it seems like people really do like Cicatrice. So curious to see how that shakes out when it comes west, because it's like 4.5 stars out of 5, which for Amazon Japan is actually a good sign.
Yeah,
Chao can vouch. Yeah.
Every game that you get more than 4 stars in Amazon Japan, that's almost like a game of the year material. I can vouch for that.
Apparently, the French word is pronounced cicatrix.
Okay,
but this game does like the X in front of it, so whatever that means.
The one that you mentioned, the falling block, was the Yumeiro Yuram. That's also by the Void Terrarium character designer Masayuki Furuya.
Oh, this is a puzzle game.
Yeah, competitive puzzle game.
Oh, then NIS America will probably actually localize this one.
It seems like the only games NIS America doesn't always localize are some of like the visual novel adventure typey games. So.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll hear a lot more from Nippon Ichi Software America here. Yeah, they have a jam-packed next year.
Yep.
Because they also have Trails into Daybreak.
Trails to Daybreak,
and they're gonna announce East 10 any moment now.
That's right.
Any moment.
Tomorrow.
2025.
I mean, 2025 at the earliest.
I mean, they've cleared up a bit of their schedule. They've gotten past the cross-bell hump.
They got through Disgaea 7 this year, so we need to get some people at Disgaea 7 before the end of the year.
Has anyone besides Junior played that?
No, I haven't been able to.
I'm not allowed to play more Disgaea until they put 3 on Steam.
Well, Adam,
that's not gonna happen.
Here's the thing. Disgaea 3, both the PS3 and the Vita version emulate well. So just, you have a Vita,
No.
right?
I actually
No.
own the Vita version. Yeah. So
Then just dump your
Then I can
Vita
just-
copy and then put emulator on PC.
Adam's not going to do that.
Is Vita emulator even that good at the state?
I was actually surprised. Like about a couple of weeks ago, I took a look at the compatibility list for it because the last time I checked, it was like they were starting to get into game. Let me put it this way: Muramasa Rebirth and all the DLC now works perfectly on Vita 3K. They fixed the
shit.
last bug last month. So
Interesting. Speaking of localization companies, PQube announced that Class of Heroes 1 and 2 Complete Edition is coming to PS5, Switch, and PC next year. This is a double pack featuring both the Class of Heroes Anniversary Edition and Class of Heroes 2G Remaster Edition, and they'll be they're be both available separately digitally.
it
So-
seems like it's kind of like those NIS America packs where you can buy like the dual pack release, which might get a physical release, but then like on Steam you can just, there's pages for each of these games just kind of individually.
not to be depressing, but is Vic Ireland even still alive at this point?
I believe that there's an all new translation for this. I believe Steiner.
Yeah, well,
is
Steiner
working on
is
that.
head of localization
Yeah, at
for
PQube.
PQube.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's like,
So Steiner's doing a whole new translation.
Sounds like Vic
Supervising
Ireland
new
is
translation.
more or less retired. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just out of the spotlight. I'll just remind people that Gaijin Works did announce Class of Heroes 3. It was coming. It never did. They never even canceled it. They just kind of fizzled. But
maybe that's the reason why Steiner, I'm assuming, is the one that pushed for this. Maybe he thought, "Fuck it, I'll do it myself." Eventually.
But well, also like PQube has worked with Acquire before. They did the Labyrinth of Zangetsu release, right? And that was
Right,
also Acquire.
okay.
So PQube and Acquire must have some sort of working relationship. Now, I'm trying to remember this. Acquire announced like a year ago, roughly, that Class of Heroes 2 specifically was getting a remaster. That was like the two. So these games get a little bit confusing. They were first released on like PSP. They're PSP games. And then they got like a first round remaster where they called like Class of Heroes 2G. And that was on PS3. And then this is like a remaster of the remaster. But then also this PQube announcement adds in Classic Heroes 1, which I don't think that ever got a remaster announced. So like they're calling this the Anniversary Edition. So it's kind of a weird dual pack where one of these games was already announced and one of them I think is new in terms of this compilation release. But regardless, the end result is that Classic Heroes 1 and 2, the most complete, newest versions of those games, are going to be available for PlayStation, Switch, and PC. Classic Heroes 3 is still Japanese only, as far as I know. So
at least we're one step closer, I guess, of this release.
yeah, by the way, if you're not aware, Classic Heroes is like a dungeon crawler. So it's first person.
Yes.
It's kind of like, Etrian Odyssey or any sort of first person dungeon crawler. Obviously, it's got like a school theme to it, if you couldn't tell by Classic Heroes. I've never played them. I know Zach reviewed at least one of them.
I played one of them on PSP, but only for a little bit. I don't know if it was one or two, to be honest.
I have a mild interest in this just because I played a lot of dungeon crawlers. I don't think I've heard like excellent things about these games, but nothing like terrible.
They were
either.
like pretty okay.
Yeah.
Yes, like they're on PSP, right? Like you're at the time, like your what was available on the system was like pretty limited.
Yeah, when was
I-
in
I-
2010 or 9 or whenever when these games released, there weren't a lot of console JRPGs. So
yeah, I don't think after hearing people gas up fucking Dungeon Travelers 2, I can trust people's like takes on dungeon RPGs anymore. I just need to see it for myself. And Dungeon Travelers 2 wasn't even bad. It was just like people said, "Oh, it's the best one on the Vita." No, it's not. Stranger of Sword City's better. Labyrinth of Refrain is
I like Stranger
significantly
of
better.
City. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's better? Well, I think James and I tend to agree. I think Stranger of Sword City and Undernotch are probably the best two experience games. They kind of have different strengths. those two.
Undernauts is the better balanced game, and it's a
Yeah.
dungeon RPG I could recommend to someone that wants to get into the genre because it's fairly beginner friendly, but also not too easy where it's going to make it too hard to transition from that to other games. Stranger Sword City is
That
a
one.
wizardry game.
Yeah, pretty much.
I had to recommend that recently remade Wizardry from Digital Eclipse. There we go.
Then there's also that Wizardry the 5 Ordeals weird release. Like that game is now available fully in English. Like it's out of early access, and this is like in that J Wizardry category where it localized some of those PS2 era J Wizardry games, and they're just available as DLC for that game. It's
a
very
lot of
interesting.
content.
Yeah. I
Huge.
one of these days I'll play these super niche dungeon crawlers that only 400 people have played. So
That's right. It's nice to see that Wizardry is in a pretty healthy spot. That
also that
mobile game
mobile
aside, mobile game
I
aside.
need to play more of. I actually need to start playing this Moonring Saga game, which is a top-down dungeon crawler, but it's just Moonring. It was released free on Steam, and it was from one of, I forget who it was specifically, but I've heard good things about it, and it's one of those games where I feel like I should play it. So co-creator of the Fable series.
Oh, okay.
I've heard nothing but good things about it. No, not Molyneux.
The other one.
Somebody that actually knows how to make an RPG, apparently.
I heard in the last I heard of Molyneux, he was doing some crypto NFT stuff, and I was like, of course.
I am not surprised. Absolutely not surprised. But yeah, it's I should play Moonring just because, like we were saying earlier, this year's been so packed with RPGs, but there's also all these smaller RPGs, these indie RPGs that nobody on staff has played yet, and it's who knows? Maybe it'll be the next Fast Libra. It's we just won't know until we try it.
Exactly.
Josh is already preparing his soliloquy for Demon's Roots.
That's it.
So, yeah.
What was the name of that Kingsfield type game that people have been talking about recently?
Fuck. I know what you're talking about. I totally forgot the name of it, but I know what it is.
There was a Reset Era thread. I should play that too. It's but fuck, there's only 2 weeks until we record.
Oh no, man.
Better get on it.
Why did you play it, Chao?
He's too busy playing Demon Head or whatever it was called.
That's right, Chao. Get off Demon Head.
Dead of the Parade, sorry.
I just want to beg for forgiveness in advance. Inevitably, we're going to miss a fantastic RPG that one of our listeners played and wants to champion because, quite frankly, we have a bunch of people on staff. There's been too many RPGs this year. Something's going to fall through the cracks. It's best to be prepared for that now.
I try my best to look out for really niche stuff.
Yeah.
Fuck, what was the name of that field thing? Now it's gonna bug me. Moving on to some smaller news here. We have Zoria, Age of Shattering, coming on March 7th, 2024 for PC. This is developed by Tiny Trinket Games and published by Anshar Publishing. Coming to Steam, GOG, and Epic on PC. It'll be priced at $25 USD. It'll initially support English and Chinese languages, though the developers are exploring the possibility of adding additional ones after launch. This is an isometric turn-based RPG. You take command of a party to liberate the Kingdom of Zoria. And every time
the
you
way
get press
that
releases,
the rest of these press releases go, they always compare it to well, if you're done with Baldur's Gate, you can try us now. And this latest press release was well, if you haven't finished Baldur's Gate by now, you should just watch a YouTube video. That's actually in the email. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I found out the name of it. It's Lunacid.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's also only $14. I'm going to buy this now, and I swear I will at least play this before Game of the Year because I feel like this is something that that we.
I should probably play it because I like Kingsfield. No, I didn't play it yet. And that's catered to me. I don't get it. Fuck. You have an update on Shiren the Wanderer, the mystery dungeon of Serpent Coil Island. Um, I don't know if we discussed like all the new ones because Kite initially translated the new info, and then we got more official info in the English language from Spike Chunsoft, detailing like the sumo status, behemoths, secret items, trading dojo, and new characters. I forgot if we went over
I don't
this.
think we did, but it's basically, and this is something they kind of teased earlier and kind of revealed now, a new gimmick in this game, which is Siren the Wanderer 6, is that you can become sumo mode, which you basically, in these games, you eat food. So, like, this happens when you eat too much food, and you become, like, big, and you can't move very well, but you're stronger. So, it's like this gimmick there. But then enemies can do sort of the same thing. So, yeah, so it's basically a new wrinkle in the game.
That's crazy. When you're in sumo mode, Shiren, you can just like go over traps without getting harmed. That's not the Shiren the Wanderer that I know. Casualized. That's it. It's over. Shiren's also immune to like effects that would or items that'll normally force him to move. It's kind of a big thing in those games because you're since battles are turn based in that game. Enemies don't move or act until like you do. So anything that like causes you to like take an action forcefully that you didn't want could be fatal in those games. So sumo mode being immune to that. But you also have like these behemoths as well that can become big. And from what I understand, if you're a normal like side Shiren against these behemoths, you have like no chance. You should just like run away because they pretty much one shot you. And there's also sacred items. There's this monster dojo that you can train in, and then there's some new characters that they released artwork for. Hibiki, Sokusen, Tugai, and Seki. Other
You'll be
than
playing this
that,
game in less than 2 or 3 months.
that's right. That's end of February release,
I mean,
2 days before episode rebirth. So yeah, almost there. CD Projekt Red is releasing Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition for PS5, Xbox Series XS, and PC on December 5th. This is basically a release that bundles in the update 2.0 and the Phantom Liberty expansion with Cyberpunk. There's an interesting wrinkle in this situation because it's getting a physical release basically on these platforms. But on the Xbox Series edition, Phantom Liberty will have its own separate, like not that separate. There's gonna be a disc for Phantom Liberty inside the Xbox Series versions, while on PS5 and PC, Phantom Liberty will not be coming physically. It'll just be a code for Phantom Liberty. Um, Marcin Momat, CD Projekt Red's global community director, clarified this on Twitter. So, if you're expecting everything physically on disc, you'll have to go for the Xbox release for this Ultimate Edition. Well, you mean not PS5 and PC. Only the base game with the update 2.0 will be on disc, while Phantom Liberty will be just a code on those platforms. So something to note. But other than that, it's pretty much what you'd expect. And then lastly, Arcadian Atlas, a game that I reviewed earlier this year, is coming to PS5, PS4, Xbox Series, Xbox One, and Switch on November 30th. This was developed by Twin Otter Studios, published by Serenity Forge. This was a strategy RPG. It was okay. I didn't, have like high feelings on it. It was a neat idea. I think there's some poorly balanced systems in it. I don't know if that got updates to kind of rectify those systems, but it's an okay, mediocre strategy RPG. Like if you're itching for one of those, it'll be fine. It'll be retailing for $29.99 US dollars when it releases on November 30th. So it's not a full price game. And yeah, that's it's coming to consoles by the end of the month, so only in a few days. So yeah, that wraps up news for this week for us. Uh,
So
upcoming
we
events.
basically have
Yeah, go for it.
next week's podcast will be a normal podcast, and then the Game of the Year cast is the week after that already.
Yeah,
think.
so so this is gonna be fucking weird, right? Because we're first off, upcoming this week we have the Dragon's Dogma 2 showcase.
Oh yeah.
And we also have the Level 5 Vision 2023 2 event. So we'll supposedly get more release dates on Level 5 stuff this week. Um, and then a PC gaming show, I guess.
Oh, I didn't know there
On
was a
November
PC
3rd.
gaming show.
Yeah.
Like, is it
Uh,
one of those Games Radar things? Those things sort of just seem to appear.
yeah. Yeah, I think so.
The future is
Yeah.
it the future gaming show? Is this off of
He-
Gamatsu's list or what?
Yeah. On Gamatsu's, it's the PC Gamer Presents PC Gaming Show 2023 Most Wanted.
I don't know what this is.
so, so I don't know. And then the week after that, so this is gonna be weird, right? Because we're holding our like the slated date for our recording for the Game of the Year is also the week where the Game Awards happen. So I guess we just
Oh.
talk about the Game Awards stuff like after, like like the week after. I don't know. Because the Game Awards is also they usually show off a decent amount of RPGs. I assume I'm not saying I know what's going to be there, but I assume there's probably they're going to announce the Elden Ring DLC for real. Going to show
Yeah.
off more. But we'll see how that all shakes out, I guess. Yeah. Until then, you can find us on our site, rpgsite.net. You can find us on Twitter at rpgsite. You can find us on Facebook via facebook.com/rpgsite.net. You can find us on YouTube via youtube.com/rpgsite.net. You can find us on your favorite podcast app, whether that be iTunes, Spotify, etc. You can also join our Discord via discord.com/invite/RPG site. And yeah, so I assume a lot of people will be talking about Dragon's Dogma this week there, depending on what they show at that showcase. Until then, you guys stay safe, have fun. We'll see you next time. Thank you.